Ano nga bang kalagayan ng siyensya o agham at simbahan during the medieval period? While the church provided a space for study, the handmaiden status was a gilded cage. Scientific progress was frequently redirected or censored, not because of a lack of intelligence, but because any inquiry that threatened or questioned theological orthodoxy was meant by condemnations, bans, and stifling requirement that reason always bow to revelation. As a result, the advancement of scientific thought always proceeded cautiously and slowly, limited by boundaries set not by nature but by religious authority. Sa ganitong kalagayan, malinaw na ang agham ay hindi ganap na malaya. Ito ay nakakulong sa kapangyarihang itinakda ng doktrina, pananampalataya at relihiyon na nakilala during the time of medieval period.
The medieval church was not the enemy of science, it was an incubator by providing the institution structure of the university and a metaphysical framework that viewed the universe as a rational product of divine architect. Religious institutions provided the essential scaffolding for modern scientific thought. Bukod dito, pinapangalaganap din ng mga institusyong panrelihiyon ang paniniwalang ang sansinukob o ang mundo ay hindi magulo o walang kaayusan, kundi isang makatuwiran at maayos na likha ng isang banal na manlilikha. Dahil dito, nabuo sa isipan ng maraming scholar ang paniniwalang ang kalikasan ay maaaring pag-aralan, unawain at ipaliwanag sa pamamagitan ng obserbasyon at pangangitwiran. Sa madaling sabi, ang pananampalataya at paghahanap ng kaalaman ay hindi agad itinuturing na magkasalungat, kundi maaaring magtulungan sa pag-unawa sa katotohanan. Sa ganitong paraan, nagbigay ang simbahang medieval ng institusyonal na estruktura at pilosopikal na pundasyon na maging mahalaga na basihan sa pagsilang ng makabagong siyentipikong pag-iisip. Kaya sa halip na sabihing hadlang ang relihiyon sa agham, mas makatarungang sabihin na sa ilang mahalagang yugto ng kasaysayan, ang relihiyon mismo ang naging daan upang umusbong ang agham.
Welcome to our roundtable discussion. This is the Science Education Stream podcast. Today, we are tackling one of the most consensus periods in the history of science, the Middle Ages. So, did religious institutions accelerate or stifle scientific progress? We have two distinguished panelists today, Dr. Cesario Martin Labajo and Dr. Jerobel Valenzuela. We are here to talk about the handmaiden metaphor or the idea that natural philosophy or what we now call science was meant to serve theology. Let's start with the institutional side. Dr. Labajo, you have argued that the church actually accelerated progress through its support of education, Doc?
Well, precisely, Vincent. So, if we look at the rise of universities in the 12th century, we see they didn't emerge in a vacuum. Institutions like Paris, Bologna, and Oxford flourished because of high level patronage from popes and kings. These universities were protected by clerical status, giving scholars a degree of freedom from local municipal interference, and even the cathedral schools of the 10th and 11th centuries, while aimed at general education laid the groundwork for medicine to emerge as a learned profession. Kaya dito nakikita natin yung pag-usbong ng universidad ay hindi aksidente, kundi bunga ng suporta ng mga makapangyarihang institusyon noong unang panahon. So sa ganitong paraan, unti-unting naging organisado at professional ang pag-aaral ng medisina at iba pang larangan ng kaalaman.
But I have to jump in there, Dr. Cesario, because while the church did provide the roof for these institutions, they also patrolled the boundaries of what could be said under that roof. Consider the example of the university in Paris in 1210 and 1231. Pope Gregory IX explicitly banned Aristotle's books on natural philosophy until they were purged of suspected error. This was not an acceleration, am I right? It was a roadblock. It created a culture where scholars had to be theologians first before becoming a scientist.
But Jerobel, we must look at the outcome. Gregory the Ninth acknowledged the work of Aristotle. The commission to purge the text never even met, and by 1255, the Faculty of Arts make lectures on all known works of Aristotle mandatory. Far from stifling it, the church eventually integrated Aristotelian natural philosophy into the very core of the curriculum. No students graduated without a thorough grounding in it. Kaya mahalaga ang naging bunga ng pangyayaring ito dahil dito ipinapakita hindi tuluyang isinara ng simbahan ang pinto ng kaalamang pilosopikal. Sa halip, isinama pa nga ng mga akda ni Aristotle sa sentro ng edukasyon bilang mahalagang bahagi at paghubog sa mga mag-aaral.
So let's look at a specific field, Doc Labajo and Doc Valenzuela. How did this handmaiden status play out in the physical sciences? Let's say the study of motion or alchemy.
I would say that in the field of alchemy is a perfect example of stifling through religious meaning. So, in the later Middle Ages, alchemy became linked to a mystical philosophy of spiritual transformation.
Yeah.
Diba? This moved it away from the serious metallurgy of antiquity and toward a pseudoscience that today's public often views as a quackery. So when the church saw alchemy as a way to shortcut natural processes, it often looked upon it with suspicion. So
Wait,
kaya
wait, wait.
naman,
Oh,
yung simbahan ay nagkaroon ng grounds. So hindi niya pinayagan. So kumbaga, nagkaroon ng barrier. So kontrolado siya ng simbahan
I
because
disagree.
of
I
this
disagree.
happening.
I disagree. The source show that alchemical tradition, like those initiated by Franciscan friar Paul of Taranto, were characterized by rigorous methodological manipulation of substances, which in fact, the work of someone like John Buridan in the 14th century shows how theology accelerated physics. So Buridan used the theological premise that God could move the entire cosmos in a straight line to defend his fluxus formae, the view of motion, because theology insisted on God's absolute power to do anything not involving self contradiction. It forced philosophers to imagine physical possibilities like a vacuum that Aristotle had deemed impossible. So makikita mo rito na kahit ang teolohiya ay naging daan upang mapalawak ang imahinasyon hinggil sa mga posibleng paliwanag sa kalikasan. Sa halip, napigilan ang pag-iisip, minsan ay hinahamon pa nito ang mga scholar na lampasan ang mga dating limitasyon ng tradisyonal na filosofiya.
But that only happened because they were trying to reconcile physical reality with the condemnation of 1277. Actually, scholars weren't free to follow the evidence. They had to navigate around theological minefields. So they are grounded with theology. Even Buridan's impetus theory, which we sometimes link to modern momentum, was still trapped within an Aristotelian framework. It was a world away from the 17th century revolution because it is still required a cause for continued motion. So still, meron pa ring papel or mahalaga pa rin yung papel ng simbahan over science.
So was there a bridge between this medieval handmaiden science and the scientific revolution?
Well, absolutely. The historiographic work of Pierre Duhem,
Mhm.
Vincent, and also the work of Annelies Mayer shows that 14th century mathematicians at Oxford and Paris laid the foundation for modern science, which Galileo's dynamics and kinematics drew substantially from these medieval developments. The Merton rule, or mean speed theorem, which Galileo used, was purely intellectual product of the 14th century. So, ipinapahiwatig nito na may malinaw na ugnayan sa pagitan ng agham noong gitnang panahon or medieval age at sa sumusunod na scientific revolution. Hindi nagsimula sa wala ang makabagong agham, kundi nakinabang sa mga ideyang nahubog na noong panahong medieval.
And yet, as historians like Alexander Koiri argue, the actual revolution was a radical conceptual shift away from the medieval organic universe towards a lifeless machinery of atoms. So the medievals were brilliant, yes, but their commitment to the handmaiden status meant they were often rearranging the furniture in a room they weren't allowed to leave. Still, they are grounded and they are hurdled by the presence of science. For instance, in optics, Robert Grosseteste and Roger Bacon had to reconcile the extramission theories of Plato and Euclid with the intromission theories of Alhazen to fit a Neoplatonic network of universal force. It was beautiful, a beautiful idea. But the question is, was it progress or just a sophisticated harmonization?
Wow. So it was beautiful, but was it progress or just sophisticated harmonization? We'll take note of that, Dr. Valenzuela. But do you believe that medicine was often viewed through a religious lens?
Yes, Dr. Vincent.
Mhm.
So, take for example, in the early Middle Ages, there was a tendency to overvalue the miraculous, so yung miracles. Saints, saints' lives often insulted conventional medicine to authenticate the healing power of the saint, while monasteries did nurture and persevere medicine. So it was often a fusion where Greco Roman tradition had to be accommodated to ideas of divine providence. So even when dissection began in universities, it wasn't research. It was pedagogy designed to illustrate the Galenic text, which was treated as an almost infallible authority. So although
Well,
they
we
have
must
that scientific revolution regarding medicine, still again they are grounded by the presence of the church.
Mhm.
but we must be careful not to fall into the trap of Andrew Dixon White, who saw a warfare between science and religion. So the vast majority of Christian leaders, like Basil of Caesarea, viewed the medical tradition as a divine gift. So religious institutions were the first to develop the hospital as an institution of charity. The hospital of Geoffrey de Bucero in 1145, for example, provided beds, food, surgical care for over 500 patients at a time. That is a massive institutional acceleration of medical care driven entirely by faith. So, ang pananampalataya ay hindi lamang usapin ng doktrina kundi naging inspirasyon din sa konkretong paglilingkod sa tao. At ang pagtatag ng mga ospital ay isang patunay na ang relihiyon ay may mahalagang ambag sa pagpapalawak ng serbisyong medikal noong panahong iyon.
Sayang matatapos na yung ating session. But anyway, as we are approaching our time limit, I think let's discuss the pedagogical implications of the history. So how does the handmaiden status of medieval science speak to our current doctoral degree in science education? Who wants to start?
For me, as
Go
the
ahead.
one who is taking this field or this endeavor, so I believe that history teaches us about the power of philosophical frameworks or the what we so called paradigms. Medieval scholars weren't ignorant; they were highly skilled truth seekers working with a specific set of constraints. So in modern science education nowadays, we often see a similar tension between pure scientific inquiry and the socially mandated goals of education. Am I right? So, as future doctors of philosophy in education, particularly in the science stream, we need to be discerning about how our current theologies, whether they are economic or political, act as a new hand maidens of science.
Well, I
So,
agree. Because it shows that science doesn't happen in vacuum. Every scientist begins with inherited theoretical knowledge and methodological commitments. The medieval era teaches us that rationality can exist within faith, as we see in the work of Nicole Oresme, who devised the predecessors of Cartesian coordinates. The brilliance of scientists is often revealed in their ability to redeploy inherited ideas for new uses. Kaya itinuturo nito sa atin na ang agham ay laging nakaugat sa kasaysayan at kultura at paniniwala ng isang lipunan. Sa halip na paghiwalayin ang pananampalataya o ang relihiyon at katuwiran, makikita nating maari silang magsama sa mas malalim na paghahanap ng katotohanan.
All right. So final words from each of you.
okay, so to close or to end this argument, so we must avoid positivism or the idea that science is just a steady march toward truth. It is given in the medieval period, which shows that science is a product of its cultural and religious environment. And that environment can often steer it into a dead end. So, still, we can bridge this gap by working together, hand in hand, tama ba? So, that's the role of science in today's society.
And I would say the Middle Ages proved that science is continuous. There was no closing of Western mind. Instead, there was a sophisticated, if different, intellectual struggle that ultimately set the physical sciences on the road of modernity. So sa aking pananaw, hindi naputol ang pag-unlad ng agham noong gitnang panahon, kundi nagpatuloy ito sa ibang anyo. Ang panahong ito ay dapat tingnan bilang yugto sa paghahanda at paghubog na naglatag ng daan tungo sa makabagong siyensya.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Valenzuela and Dr. Labajo.
Thank you so much, Doc
Thank
Vincent.
you.
This has been, I think, at this point, it was a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much. Napakataba ng mga utak po ninyo. Maraming salamat po sa pagpapaunlak sa atin. And of course, to summarize, it seems that the church was both a patron and a regulator, accelerating science by building its institutions, but stifling it when it strayed from the handmaiden role. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. So Still, it permits, pero pag hindi na siya or kapag nako-question na yung theology, so dun na siya magkakaroon ng barrier.
Mm.
So,
Pero
I
pwede
believe
silang
pwede silang
work
mag-work
together.
hand in
Alright.
hand.
Okay,
Because
once
our
again.
scientists are also into church, like Grigor Mindel, di ba?
Mhm.
He was an Austrian monk. So yun, patunay yun na pwedeng magsama yung siyensya at yung simbahan.
Yeah. Faith and science. Once again, thank you to our panelists and of course to our listeners. We hope this helps you appreciate the charm and complexity of the Middle Ages in our episode entitled The Handmaiden of Faith, Medieval Science in the Shadow of the Cross. So this is the Science Education Stream podcast. Signing off.